My name is Vicky. Working Math Challenge also at my TC. 大家好，晚上好，我叫李维奇，然后我是跟 Chip 还有 Math Challenge 一起，还有春晖杯一年一起大家组织了这么一场这个 Business Plan 的这个 workshop。首先欢迎大家抽出时间星期五晚上来来听讲课是吧？今天剑桥会有一个那个跳舞的那个 dance party， 如果这个完了以后，大家可以进行去嗨是吧？不过首先我给大家介绍一下，今天我们主要有3位讲师第一位是这个徐老师，他是以前这个春晖杯的一个优胜者，然后给大家分享一下这个一些这个 business plan writing 的经验。然后我们还有这个Mr. Stephen Davis, who's the managing director of the CXO advisory group, right? Wonderful. And then we have Martin Steinman here, who's from DAT Venture and also an investor and also an entrepreneur. So we have a variety of angles to counter the business plan writing. 那么今天晚上我们有3位主讲师第一位是徐老师，然后还有这个马青，还有这个 Steve， 我就不用在中文再说一遍了。那首先我们kick off 是什么呢？我们是要有一位这个 entrepreneur 有一位 startup， 他是这个 Taha，who is the founder of the Goodwall. How much money did you just close recently?
So we've raised more than $3 million.
Recently raised more than $3 million, and he's actually going to be here to pitch to you guys about his startups, to just give you an example, and also if you have any questions, to ask him later. So without further ado,
So thank you very much for having me here. Actually, this is like a dream come true for me, because I was literally talking to Wakey and I was saying, you know what, I really need to be able to speak to some Chinese students to find out whether what I'm doing makes actually any sense to them. So the thing is, Goodwall is a social network that basically helps high school students make better choices to go to university. So we basically help students find the university that best matches them. We then help them evaluate that university and then prepare to go to that university by a variety of things, including being able to connect with that university, being able to connect to students at that university, and being able to connect to other students. So it's essentially a LinkedIn for high school students. It helps them showcase what they've done, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what we've done so far. So the problem is, choosing university is really hard for students, and then getting into university is even harder if you want to go to the right one. And finally, it didn't appear on the slides, but finally, going into a foreign system can be quite daunting as well for international students. So, okay, so this is a problem, it's the wrong slides. I'm going to skip this, blah, 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 because you don't need to hear the pitch, you just need to hear the, oh my god. This is what happens when I let someone else do my slides. But I'm going to blame it on Martin. But, so this is what the product looks like. Basically, a student comes on and says, this is what I would like to study, this is where I would like to study, this is the subject that I'm interested in, these are the grades that I got, these are some people that I'm interested in studying with, and then we match you with certain universities. I don't know if this seems a bit familiar, maybe a little bit like Tinder. You can see up to 15 universities that you may or may not be interested in, and you can say, okay, I may be interested in finding out more information about this university a bit later, or no, absolutely I'm not interested in this university, or I can find out a little bit more information. After that, you come onto your profile, and over here we say, based on the matches that you have, we'll help you build your resume to stand out when applying to university. So this can be extracurricular activities, it can be achievements, sport, fundraising, music, whatever makes you different. You can find opportunities and also inspire yourself by looking at what other students are doing, and then show this off in a very credible, beautiful way to show what you've done. Now, what we also do is allow you to really evaluate and prepare. We say, you should not only have, let's say, some algorithm. Right now, our matching system is around 60,000 courses from over 2,000 universities, and we have a matching system that we've developed. But apart from that, we want to give students the ability to communicate with the university directly. And today we have 40 universities using the platform. But what's more, and this is what I wanted your opinion about, we're opening it up now to allow students to communicate with mentors. So that means students who are actually at that university. So for example, we want to launch the ability for Chinese students to communicate with Chinese students who are actually at university. So that means that instead of talking to guidance counselors who don't know what they're talking about, or to some Americans who don't actually understand your needs, you can talk to a Chinese student who did exactly what you're trying to do 1 year before. So an 18, 19-year-old Chinese student who's in university can chat with a 17, 16, 15-year-old Chinese student who's looking to come to your university. So that's what we want to try and put together. And I want to find out whether or not that's a good idea. And yeah, that's what I'd like to find out. So that's it. Oh, apart from that, we have 400,000 students using it. So sorry, my pitch isn't great, but we don't have many Chinese students, and that's what we want to find out. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. So Taha will obviously stick around, and then we can communicate and then exchange ideas and insights. So thank you so much, Taha. Thank you very much. And then that's just an idea to show you sort of like introduction to products and also business model. He touched a little bit on that, and also what a pitching might be like. But obviously tonight the big theme is business plan building. And so our first speaker tonight will be Martin. And let's give a round of applause to Martin to talk about business plan writing, variety of angles.
It's amazing how fast he talks in English and in Chinese. All right. Business plans. Who has written a business plan? All right. When you write a business plan, do you go for a big, juicy market, fairly broad, with a lot of stuff, or you go for a very narrow, small market? Who is for big markets? Who is for small markets? Okay. We'll repeat this once I'm done. All right. You know, I've been involved in quite a few startups. I'm currently together with Steve over at Mass Challenge. I just recently joined Net Ventures, which is another incubator here in Boston that specializes in bringing foreign companies to Boston. So we seek out, companies outside the U.S. and bring them to Boston to immerse them into the Boston community, and then hopefully lead them to financing here. And I recently got into the BU program for entrepreneurship. Have had my own company, and a number of years ago was a VC investing in early stage companies. So I'm really thrilled to be here tonight, and would like to do this in an open way. So if you have any questions, I know sometimes Chinese students don't ask all that many questions, but please do so. All right, business plans, best practices targeting investors. The first thing I want to say is that business plans are not what you might think. And the question I just asked is sort of an introduction to this. And as I said, as I go through this, I hope we can clarify what primarily the investor view is when you look at someone pitching a business plan to you. And I would love for you to understand at the end of this what a business plan is for, and in particular what it's not for. So usually you have a 3 to 5 year projection, and they're made up at best, okay? They're bullshit, because you made it up, okay? It's something that you cannot predict. It's someone who asks you to write a piece of paper to create a forecast and sort of say, how the future will evolve, even though you really don't have a clue, okay? And investors know that. So don't think that when you, present such a forecast that the investor doesn't understand that it's made up. It's very important to understand that. So what do investors actually think looking at you and your business plan while you're presenting this? Right? What's going through their head as they kind of sit there very relaxed and watch you sweat? They want to primarily see how bold the team is. Are you there to conquer the world? is this a guy or a girl or a person who is really determined to create something big? What is the level of aspiration that you put out there as you present this? What is your resolve when you get poked, or when the investor starts to ask questions about how you came up with this number, or why this number is this and not something else? And given it's made up, right, what they really want to figure out is what your resolve is when you get pushed. And then they want to understand how you think about your business. They would like to see, how do you look at the cost, right? How much is product? How much is marketing? How do you sort of see this evolve? And what mental model do you have in your head when you think about this business and how you intend to grow and unfold this? So this is what goes through an investor's head. They don't give a crap about your numbers. So we're replacing this business plan with real information, and I think it's really critical that as you create a business plan or a pitch, that the real information, the stuff that actually really matters, is also in your pitch deck and not just the made-up stuff. So this is what you need to present when you really talk to an investor and want to be taken seriously. You need a business model that is based on unit economics, and I know that Steve is going to talk a lot more about that part. But you need a business model. Does everyone in here understand what the difference is between a business model and a business plan? Yeah? No? Yes? No? No. A business model is how you make money one customer at a time. Right? What do customers pay for? How much? And what does your customer acquisition cost? A business plan is a forecast about your P&L, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. It's entirely different. Then the second thing you need is a cash forecast, because somehow, when you run out of money, you're dead. So therefore, you got to figure out what your cash forecast is. And in early stage companies, your cash forecast is entirely based on headcount. So you got to figure out, how long is this money going to take me while I pay all the bills that I already signed up to pay. And then it helps to discuss scenarios, right? A business plan is not just a one-way street, and the business plan is this, and it's a slide, and it says year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. No, a business plan should be a discussion of scenarios. If this, then this, and if this, then maybe this, right? So that you can sort of see some of the trade-offs. And very often, these trade-offs are determined by how much money you get, right? So you can look at the investor and say, well, if you give me 100K, I can do this. If we give me $1 million, I can do this. And if you give me 10 million, I'll do this. It's entirely different. And then you need metrics based on milestones. Very often it's the other way around, that you say you need milestones based on metrics. But in this case, I think the metrics change based on where you are. So if you're very early in your process, you need to evaluate demand. But if you're a little later in your process, you will evaluate how the product is used by your users. So the metrics evolve and change as you grow your business. And investors want to understand your metrics. So, today I think still a lot of investors create an investment thesis. At least at the time I did this, it was kind of funny. We wrote, books, PhD thesis about companies. But I think it's a good practice to kind of put it on paper and explain why you want to invest in a certain company, so that later you can go back and say, oh, now I get it, that's why I did this stupid thing. So this is sort of an investment thesis for a Series A, not for a seed round, for a Series A. So if you're pre-MVP, you don't have product metrics yet, right? Because you're pre an initial product. The big question is there demand? And if you want to raise a Series A today without actually a product, it's almost impossible. You need a very strong team, an exceptionally strong team. You need a team with a track record, and often a team with a relationship with that investor. In other words, someone who already made them, a lot of money. And very often the project needs to be not only inside a firm's sector focus, but maybe even something they have been waiting for. Because investors spend an awful lot of time talking about sectors, how the future will evolve, which parts of the industry are going to take off next and where there are holes and gaps and opportunities, so that all these investors have a sector focus. So when you walk in and get a no, that doesn't mean that your plan is stupid or that you're stupid. Very often it means that you're outside of that sector focus. If you're outside of the sector focus, it's very likely the investor will pass. So that's a very important consideration as you do this. Then when you're post-MVP, meaning you actually have a product, you have some users, then you start having metrics, right? I can then start to figure out how many sign-ups I get, and I can metricate in great detail what customers actually do as they use my product. And that data is extremely valuable and important because you want to figure out how much money you can extract from those users that actually come in. And you can also assess whether the team has reached what is called product market fit, right? Whether the product actually meets an initial demand. And that's usually the inflection point where once you have some initial PM fit, you can start putting money in the beginning, and then you will get something else out over here. So it starts to scale. And I think, to wrap this up, I just want to give you sort of a high-level metric, okay, how you can tell whether you have product market fit or not, right? Because somehow, sometimes it's difficult to say, well, do I have it? Do I not? And I'm going to use two sort of classical examples. One is a B2Z example, and the other one is a B2B example. And I think that covers, a fairly broad swath of what's out there in terms of startups. So in a B2Z product, you have users that hopefully use this product, with a certain frequency. It depends on use case, whether they use it every day or whether they use it every week or maybe every month. But you have a certain recurring frequency where a user who signed up comes back and uses this. And then the retention analysis shows that on day one, you have something like a 30% retention. Now, that's not all that high, right? You have 100 users that sign up, and you would like 30% to still be there, one day later. Okay? And you would like to see something like 10% of those users to still be with you 30 days in. Okay? I'll show you that you need higher numbers than that longer term. But for a B2Z product, or for an initial product market fit, this is sort of pretty okay. You can definitely say you got something. Now, if you have a 30-day retention of 1%, then something is still badly wrong. Then you would like to see users to add data into your app, or engage with it so that they put something of their own into the app, so that it gets harder and harder to abandon it or move out. And then you would like to see a path to something like 300,000 monthly active users. So these are not signed up users. These are users that in a 30-day period come back at least once. Maybe it's 100,000, but you would like to see, sort of a path on how your growth will kind of get you there. These are, typically social networking products. What Taha presented earlier falls into this category, sort of a set of metrics. And you can see that if you need about 5,000 signups per day, right, but that still says nothing about PM fit. You can have lots of signups. Maybe the day one retention is close to 0, and therefore you have no PM fit. But signups is a good thing. It means there is demand. Now, if you want to get to 1 million monthly active users, which very often is sort of the threshold to say a B2C app has really kind of made it, you can see here that if you have 10,000 signups a day and a 30% long-term retention, on the previous slide I talked about 10% long-term retention, right? Here we assume 30% long-term retention, 10,000 signups a day. It will take you about a year to get to 1 million. So just to give you a perspective of what this means. 10,000 a day is a lot. So on the B2B side, it's a very different trick. And this is more like a SaaS model. So here we talk about business metrics that are really a SaaS business model. And you look at something like a 3 to 5% conversion rate from free to paid. And I haven't said anything about whether how you sign up users, right? How you get to someone to come in and use your product for free. That's an entirely different process. But let's assume you can get to something like 3 to 5% conversion rate from free to paid, however you do that. Then you would like to see less than 3% monthly churn rate and improve it. And the churn rate is really the number of users you lose based on the total number of users you got. So that the churn rate plays a huge factor in your growth. I'll show you that in a minute. And then you would like to get to something like CAC to LTV ratio, which is customer acquisition cost to long-term value of somewhere between 2 and 3 initially. So that means it costs less to acquire a user than what you get out of it long term. Then you would like to see a monthly recurring revenue that converges on 100K a month. Right? So you need something like 5,000 paying users, $20 a month, something like this. You've got to think really hard about your free tier and how much you give away for free. I see more and more of these B2B companies that give you a 14-day free trial and then you pay. So the churn rate is really a huge factor in here. And this example assumes that you're currently at 2,500 monthly active users, that you have 100 sign-ups a day, and at a 3% conversion rate to paid, you would see something like 90 converted users per month. So you get 90 new paid users a month. And then you have a 3% churn rate on 2,500 users, that's 75. So you take 90 minus 75 is 15. So you have a net add of 15 a month. And with that, it's going to take you about a year to get to 5,000. Right, so you can see that churn rate plays a huge role in this. And you can obviously influence churn rate by improving your product, removing friction, or whatever you do to kind of fix this. So I'll have a very quick summary, and then I'll ask you whether you can resonate with any of this. So if you're unable to find the users who want your product, you'll fail. So it's kind of pretty simple. It means there's no demand. And I think that is what most companies stumble over. You create something, there's just no demand. And then most startups fail before they reach PM fit. So to get to this initial PM fit is really hard, and that's what happens a lot at incubators. If you go look at Mass Challenge, at Venture, at Y Combinator, Techstars, that's typically the process company are going through to sort of figure out whether they can get to PM fit. Because if they can, that will increase their chances to land the financing hugely. Then as a last statement, I would say business plans do not show either. Right? Business plans is just a forecast. So did this make any sense? Any questions? What data you want to show? Well, the data you want to show is the metric that is relevant to your business. So if you're in a B2C business, it's different data than in a B2B business. But I think I showed you the parameters, right? And then you need to tune this so that it applies to your particular situation. So a good example is if you're in B2C, let's say, you could be LinkedIn or you could be WhatsApp, right? And it's very different when you look at it from an engagement perspective, because with WhatsApp, you would like people to use it every day. With LinkedIn, maybe every month would be okay, right? So you need to, adapt the numbers to your case. Yes?
Sorry, just a little bit confused about the acronym. What's the PM, PPP, and M?
PM fit is product market fit. I apologize, it's just so long to write out. Yeah. It's this magic thing when you actually have a product that users start to engage with, right? So and then it evolves, because it's not it's not like a milestone. You have it and then you have it. You know what I mean? It's something that will constantly evolve. But you get to sort of an initial point where you can see that now it starts to track. And there are lots of tools. I didn't talk about tools today, but there are lots of tools that allow you to measure these numbers, right? Yes.
Are these two business models, the freemium and the SaaS model, are the two main business models you've seen?
I think that's what's in the software space. You know, if you look at ICT businesses, that's what's out there a lot. Yes, it's either between businesses or between businesses and consumers, right? You know, when hardware gets involved, it sort of changes because then you sell hardware, right? But for software businesses, I think that's the prevailing model today.
Thank you, Martin. And then Martin will definitely stick around for the Q&A session afterwards. Let's give a round of applause. Next up, we have Steve.
Welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me and putting up with me. To give you a little bit of my background, I'm a recovering engineer. I moved to the dark side of sales and marketing and operations back in 1979 when I launched Atari's home computer. So I go back into the PC business before there was actually an IBM PC. And saw a lot of different things. I actually did my first startup back in 1981. And it's very much different today than it was back then. And what I'm going to talk about here is some mistakes that I see in business plans and when I hear startups talking about how they're going to market. I'm a little bit different than what Martin talked about. So this way you're not hearing a lot. There's not a lot of duplication, hopefully. Now, you're spending a lot of time on your business plan. I know that. And most of you, how many of you are in business school or went to business school and they teach you to do business plans, right? Okay. Here in the U.S., most startups fail. 90% of all startups fail. So if all the business plans are right, there'd be a higher percentage of successful businesses out there. Clearly, what we've come to know here in the U.S. is business plans are okay to a point. And actually, for the most case, if you're talking about investors here in the U.S., they don't read business plans anymore. They're more interested to, once they meet you, in getting a 2-page overview and your slide deck, your pitch deck. And because of this, there's a person that I know I've worked with many years ago, a gentleman by the name of Steve Blank. He's a professor over at Stanford now on the West Coast, also involved with 500 startups. He's got a great quote. Your business plan is absolutely perfect, but it never survives your first contact with a customer. Because you're developing your business plan from the inside looking out. And what you need is customer information coming in to tell you what reality is going to be. Now, so based on that, you need to be focusing maybe a little bit less on your business plan and focusing more on getting out of the building and talking to potential customers to find out really what they want and what they need and how they're going to buy. We're going to talk about some of that. Now, startups, if you ask 20 different consultants why startups fail, one of the big reasons for me is their business model. Their business model typically is not workable, or scalable. And there are a lot of different components to that. We're going to talk about a couple of those because we don't have a lot of time. Martin and I could do a whole day on this. Easy. They start, as part of the business model, they have a feeble go-to-market strategy. Most of the big glaring holes that I see in business plans, when you get a bunch of engineers doing the business plan, they focus on the product, they focus on the market, they focus on the size of the market, but they never talk about how they're going to get to market, or they don't do it adequately. And when they talk about it, they talk about addressing the entire market. You know, I'm going to enter the telecommunications market. The telecommunications market in the US is a $20 billion market just in the US alone. But they're only addressing a small portion of that market. But they talk about the whole thing, like they're going to address it. Any potential market that you can talk about, you can segment 1,000 different ways. And you have to figure out what segment you're going to address. Because as a startup, you don't have enough resources or money to effectively go after the entire market to begin with. So you have to figure out where you're going to start. So you have to look at all those market segments, figure out what they all are, and then you look at each segment individually and figure out how attractive are they. You'll find some market segments that are slow growth or no growth or negative growth. You'll find some segments that are very fast growing. You'll find some segments that have a lot of competition, others that don't. And what you want to do is figure out what market segments will give you your best chance for success. So some of the things you should look at is what are the threats in that market segment? Who's your competition? And your competition may not be who you think it is. So for instance, when I deal with startups all the time, I get a lot of, well, Apple's our competition, or Xerox is our competition, or Kubota is our competition, fill in the blank. In many cases, your competition is going to be the way they're doing business today. Ease of market entry. Some market segments are going to be tougher to get into than others. It's going to cost more to get into than others. It's going to require more expertise to get into than others. What resources do you need? Some market segments, you're going to need more money. You're going to need more people. You're going to need different types of products. Customer acquisition costs. In certain segments, it's going to cost a lot more to find customers and keep them. And also you want to know what the customer lifetime value is. Are there government regulatory issues? Now this is something I always look for, because if you have a product, a new regulation in a government could be a key trigger event that makes a sales opportunity. So, because everybody has to adhere to government regulations. So if there's a new government regulation and you have a product that can solve that issue for the company in meeting that regulation, all of a sudden they're going to be very interested in your product. But ideally what you want to do is you want to take all those ideas, you want to mash them all together, and you want to choose the 1 or 2 market segments that you can go after and make a splash at, and develop a beachhead using military terms, right? Establish yourselves, get a cash flow going, and then you could branch out to other market segments from that standpoint. Now, we have a grand ideal of the human race, right? By Star Trek term, by US terms, the pioneer spirit, conquering the West. By Star Trek terms, going where no one has gone before. Okay? The thing is, people don't strive for the great unknown. People hate change. And so what you're going to find in some of your market segments is your biggest competitor is the status quo, the way people are doing business today. Because Life throws everybody so much garbage on a daily basis. If I have something over here that's working, that I know, I've been using it for years, and it's not elegant, it's not cost effective, it's, you know, cumbersome to use, but I know it, it's comforting. I'm putting out fires all day long with clients or other pieces of my life. So it's something that's stationary, I don't have to do it. So to get me to want to change that, you have to show me a major ROI or value for me to do that. Right? So you may find certain businesses, the way they're doing business today is your biggest competitor. So based on that, you have to figure out what the buyer's journey is. Now, part of the problem with business plans is they focus on users. Because they focus on the product and the technology, they focus on users. You know, who's going to use my product? Well, I want to know who's going to buy my product. When you're dealing with corporations, the people that use it are not necessarily the people that buy it or make the purchase decision. You need to understand that. So what is that buyer going to go through in deciding that they need your product? First of all, people buy for 3 basic emotional reasons. I don't care what the product is. It could be cosmetics, it could be a business product, it could be a piece of software, right? They buy for 3 basic emotional reasons. 1, pain, right? What is their pain? If I have a I hate going to the dentist, but if I have a toothache, I'll go to the dentist, right? And I'll let them drill my teeth or pull a tooth just to get rid of that pain. The second most reason why people buy, fear of pain. I don't necessarily like to floss my teeth on a daily basis. Or, you know, brushing sometimes, I'm too tired, but I do it anyway because I don't want to go to the dentist. I don't want to get pain where I have to go to the dentist. And then the third reason is, what can you gain from it? You know, a brighter smile, from a cosmetic standpoint, looking younger, eliminating wrinkles. But those are the 3 basic emotional reasons. But you need to understand that for your market segment. What are their motivations in buying your product? Where do you find them? Right? What distribution channels do they use? Where do they make their decisions? Where do they get their information? Who or what influences them? I guarantee you, whatever industry segment you're talking about, that there are key influencers in that industry that form opinions of the industry in regards to products and services, etc. How do they want to engage and buy? The way to engage me and get me to buy is very different than my 20-year-old daughter. Right? I'm on the web all the time. I don't read much anymore from a paper standpoint. It's all electronic. But if you wanted to get information in my father's hands, it had to be in a paper format. Newspaper, magazine, on the TV. With me, on the web. I don't do a lot of browsing on my phone, but my daughter, she lives and dies by her smartphone. So depending on the market segment you're going and the profile of the buyer, you have to get the information in the format that they want to get it. Otherwise, they'll never know you're there. And also, how do they want to buy? If you're focusing on a market segment that where you have high-end product, high-end fashion product, and you want to be here in the U.S. in like the Nordstroms or the Macy's of the world, it doesn't help you if your product is in Walmart. Right? 2 different level of buyers. The buyers that would really buy your product would never see it, and the buyers and the customers who are in Walmart wouldn't ever buy your product from a price point standpoint. So the distribution channel you choose is very key. Who's involved in the purchase decision? When you do, how many of you, when you're in doing your business plans, are B2C consumer type products? Okay, and business products? Corporate? Okay. In the corporate world, The average number of people involved in the decision to buy products in the corporate world is 7.4. And what happens is everyone is an opportunity to say no to the purchase decision. And the only way to get around that is knowing who is involved in the purchase decision, so you can do parallel selling, bringing all of the people in the decision process along, maybe not at the same rate. So this way you're not restarting the sales process every time somebody else gets involved. And so if you do that, you can actually shorten your sales cycle. But you can only do that if you know who's involved in the decision process. Also, when it comes to certain items, from a personal standpoint, you want to know if I'm going to make the decision, or my wife's going to make the decision, or both of us are going to do it. It doesn't help you if you're going to be selling me, trying to sell me, or my wife makes the decision. Or trying to sell her when she knows I'm going to make the decision. So you need to understand all those dynamics, whether it's consumer or whether it's in the B2B world. Now, part and parcel to this, when I deal with going to market, I hear a lot of stuff that doesn't really make a lot of sense. For instance, I see a lot of mobile app companies starting up, and they say, well, we're going to, it's going to be we're going to go viral, and we're going to, that's the way we're going to get our name out, and that's the way they're going to do it. And the problem is, think about how many products actually become viral. With the millions of apps in the Android Play Store or in the iPhone store, chances are you're not going to get noticed because there's so many that are out there. So you got to figure another way to get to market. And when it comes to sales, what I'd like to see in building a customer profile and from a potential investor standpoint is not just who the profile of the customer is, but I want to see who are the top 10 accounts you're going to focus on that are prime prospects for you, because those can be your reference accounts. And if you're selling in the corporate world, nobody wants to be first. So you've got to figure out a way to get a reference account. And you'll offer them sweetheart deals to do it. Plus, they're going to give you some vital feedback and input on your product as you move forward. Unrealistic financials. I see this all the time. Martin covered this. But basically, from a financial standpoint, I hear, let's say with mobile apps, well, we had 300,000 downloads in the past month. Well, great. But as Martin pointed out, and a statistic shows, 70% of all applications get uninstalled within the first 30 days. So what's more important from an investor standpoint is how many stay with you, not how many you've got installed. And the other thing is, because of the big markets, and the business schools teach you market penetration. They may come, I see a lot where, this is a $2 billion market. In the first year, we're going to get 0.25%. And the next year, we're going to get 1% of the market. And that's the way we're going to grow our revenue. Well, as Martin pointed out, nobody's going to believe your numbers anyway. And especially nobody's going to believe those types of numbers. The only numbers that hold any type of credibility are those that are designed from the bottom up. So the ones where you pick those 10 accounts or 20 accounts or a distribution channel and you've got your business model, how many accounts can I get on day one? How many accounts can I get on the second quarter? How many channel partners can I bring on board, and how many customers can those channel partners bring on with what frequency? And you build it up from the ground up. Nobody's going to believe those numbers. As Martin said, nobody will believe those numbers anyway. But at least that shows a reasonable methodology in coming out with them. Then one other thing that's usually a glaring omission in most pitch pitches I see is they're going to ask for money, but they don't necessarily tell you what they're going to use the money for. If I'm going to give money to a company, I want to know how they're going to use the funds. Is it going to be for hiring additional personnel, filling in a major hole in the business team, right? Going to market, expanding the market, whatever. But I want to know what you're going to be spending my money with. And so are the investors going to want to know that. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of things. One, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one that's most adaptable to change. Since your business plan is most probably going to be wrong, it's those that are out there that can adapt to the changes that you see that are going to succeed. And as you're going out there, don't just throw a lot of money, effort, or resources at something, a new marketing program. Test it, prove it, then scale it. If you test it and it doesn't work, okay, great. We'll move on to something else. If you test it and it works, you've proved it, and now you can spend your limited dollars and scale it. That's it. Anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the speech. But I want to know, like, when I'm writing down who are our potential buyers, should we write a specific group, or is it everyone can be the buyer?
Well, my favorite answer to most things is it depends. If you're dealing with a consumer type product, just about any product that you have, not everybody is going to be a potential buyer for the product, right? Even if you have a consumer product, there's going to be certain demographics of a buyer that is a prime candidate for you. So, for instance, trying to sell high heel fashion shoes to me is not going to work because I don't wear high heels.
Yeah. Yeah, but I just finished making the marketing research. I try to show everyone can buy the thing. So I tried different statistics techniques, and I finally found one shows all the people can be the buyer. Let's not. Should I continue doing that one or just use others?
I don't quite understand.
Oh, sorry.
I would need to know a little bit more about your product, but I guarantee you could probably narrow that down. You know, if you have a product that can be geared, that you can sell to everybody, right? Unless you've got a major marketing budget, you're not going to be able to address everybody. So I'm going to recommend that you would narrow that focus down.
Great, Steve. I can maybe add real quick. I didn't answer the question I started out with, right? But I think it's pretty obvious that a narrow market is what you're after. Because what you want to do is you want to dominate the market you're going into. If you can get 2-3% of a big market, nobody wants any of that.
Right, and in that narrow market, right, you develop your beachhead, you get a positive cash flow going, and now you can start getting additional resources to break out into adjacent markets.
Anybody else? One more question?
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Next up, we have Dr. Xu.
So today I'm going to challenge Steve and Martin a little bit. Why? Because I didn't get their money. So I'm going to speak in Chinese.
I'll turn on Google Translate.
Okay. But the reason I'm going to speak in Chinese first is my English is not that good. And the second is, for this competition, the business plan, you have to write in Chinese, no matter how good your English is. Okay? So I'm going to, okay. Where is my slideshow? Slideshow? Okay. So here is my a brief summary of my education and my working experience. I'm not here to look for a job. If you are interested to invest, that's fine. But mostly, I want to show you guys that I have been through there, done that. So, okay. OK， 这是我的一个简单的介绍就像很多一样，很多书虫一样，就是这样子过来的。那到了美国之后呢，现在在公司工作。那公司工作以后呢，就是说公司做了几年，你就知道了，就有点 bored， right？ No matter how you love your major， 你做了几年以后，你就有点油了，所以就想做点事情。那做点事情呢，这个我们麻州沃斯顿那边有个北京中文学校，今年是20年，我做校长，今年是第13年。然后你做了几年校长，现在还在做嘛，然后觉得又有点油了，就觉得因为就把这个 team 给 establish 之后，你就没那么忙了嘛。所以呢，就是08年的时候呢，我就正好 Worcester State University 他们有需要，所以我就在那边呢就又兼职教语文化学。那教了几年之后呢，因为我只教一门课，所以教了几年之后就又有一点空闲，就是所以呢就蠢蠢欲动，看到这个也走了，那个也走了，所以自己也想去摸爬滚打一下，走一走看一看。对吧？一走就走成一番，这个就是李总，这个是林总，这个是丁总，对不对？那到国内你就知道那个姓名，什么总什么总 ，OK。所以其实不是，其实就是还是有一种需要，因为知道这个最近几年你们 MIT 这边经常会有家乡的这种国内的这种，以前是叫招商引资，对吧？后来呢，就是国内这个经济发展，这个。腰杆粗了，他们不要理商了，不来招商了，他们是招财引资的，来招财。所以呢，他们来了以后就是说，哇，你这个项目好啊，你要回国的话，怎么投资啊，银行贷款啊都不愁啊，这怎么能做，怎么大？我呢就去考察，我就把我们公司的老板，那带回去考察。那考察了之后，他就说可行，干嘛？那就干。所以就在国内摸爬滚打了，然后。这个就是说，在国内呢，在它盐城这个就是市一级的城，我是盐城人，所以说为了这个爱护家乡，为了有没有盐城的，这可能不会有，江苏的有没有？有，江苏的有 ，OK， 所以呢，就是说，那在盐城开始这个投资创业，那政府呢，就是说这些钱呢放在这，你政府来招财引资的时候啊，我告诉你们，就是他说你要回去，我们给你多少万。这个你不要完全信的，还是你自己申请的，你还是要过关斩六将的，知道吧？你斩不完了，你也是灰溜溜回来了。你斩六将斩完了，你就拿到这个钱了，对吧？所以说你不要说你到我们的创业园来，我们给你50万，给你100万，是吧？启动资金，这个没有 free 的，都是要你自己去申请的，是吧？所以呢，也拿了一些钱，但是呢，你们这边可能做 MIT 做技术的，做 computer 这方面。IT 啊，或者是比较多，我不知道有多少做生物的、做医学的方面的，有没有？做生物医学的啊？那我呢就是做药物开发方面的，所以呢，今天这个可能呢，会用我自己的例子来跟你们讲。那创业计划书呢，就是说，有大头，但是呢，没有一个 format fits all，there's no one format fits all。但是，而且呢， 中国跟美国它还不一样，因为你看我这个在中国呢，我也申请过funding，在美国我也申请过funding，都拿到过。那在 VC 的话，我们跟中国的 VC 也接触过，跟美国的 VC 也接触过，因为我有个项目，它已经 preclinical 做完了，就是要做 clinical trial， 所以说做一个不大的公司是没有办法做下去的，所以说就是要跟 VC 去接触。那下面就谈到这个创业计划书，就是在创业计划书写的时候，就是在跟中国跟美国是截然不同。美国你写 SBIR 也是一个创业计划书，也是一个像 business plan， 它有 limit page 六页，我不知道有没有谁在小公司做过写过这种创业 SBIR， 就 Small Business Innovation Reward，OK， 所以它是6 page limit， 不算这个 reference。但是在中国，那创业计划书没有 limit。OK， 你要写6 pages，most likely 会 trash 掉。这就是你要写很多，你要把它扩展，特别是写这个方点。那我不知道有多少人想回国创业的？有，不错啊！你想回国创业呢，就是说你要是特别是在美国，你在这个 MIT 这个教室里做过了，你拍一张照片，有 MIT 的背景，回国去忽悠还可以的。没有了，现在不灵了，你知道吧？现在这一套真的不灵了。那个，因为现在这个双方交流的多了，你知道吧？因为跟以前不一样，以前你是 MIT 回去的，哇，那众星捧月，对不对啊？是不是？那钱就塞到你手里，你有什么？你没项目没关系，先把钱拿去用，对不对？现在不一样，既然不一样了，对吧？那个，所以你创业，你就要想到，你这个时候现实就是你创业，我创业的目的是什么？当然做生意嘛，我不是去做慈善嘛，因为现在也没到做慈善的时候，对不对？所以你肯定是要赚钱，对不对？一方面赚钱，但是赚钱你知道吗？钱赚的多啊少是没有一个 limit， 对不对？所以你还有一个，实际上还有一个就是说呢，自我价值的实现。你觉得我如果说我办一个公司，每年它的 revenue 有50万，对不对 ？net profit， 我觉得也挺满意的。可是你看到一个100万的，你心里又有点沮丧了，对不对？你越想去再冲一把，总是要给自己过去。当然人总是要进步的，对不对？所以你要想清楚自己创业的目的是什么。你说我赚了钱怎么办？我怎么花？有没有想过？我就是要赚钱，所以赚钱你不是你最终的目的，你赚钱了以后该怎么用？你想这个。然后，那你参加这个春晖杯这个大赛，你的目的是什么？首先讲这个大赛它设立的目的是什么？春晖杯是中国呢，就是说应该来说是今年是第10年，它应该是最早设立的这个创业大赛，也许是之一，但应该是最早设立的。可是在这之后呢，你知道就创业大赛就太多了，有各个地方的创业大赛，有政府创业大赛，有各种名目的创业大赛，所以说搞得现在创业大赛呢，就是很多时候你有一个 proposal 的话，你说我就想参加哪个创业大赛，而且有的创业大赛给你这个诱饵很大，对不对？你要回来面试，有的要在这边美国进行初赛，对不对？然后美国还有一个预选，然后选了以后，当然美国因为技术比较强嘛，选了以后基本上你回国都能得奖，对吧？然后得奖呢就可以，当然国内他们还会找一些国内的来陪衬你，你们是红花，但国内的好多企业是绿叶，你知道吧？会有这样子的，因为把气势给搞上去。那你在这个参加春晖杯大赛，像你们年轻人，我不知道你们有多少有绿卡，有多少想留在美国办绿卡的，有没有 ？OK， 想留在美国办绿卡的，好机会。你知道吗？办绿卡，你的 lawyer 问你，你有没有得过奖？你说我在中国的大学里面，我得过什么3等奖、1等奖的，什么奖，这个不算，它是国际大奖，国家级的。国家级的，但是春晖杯就算，它是教育部办的，所以说是个国家级的奖。所以说，如果你想办绿卡，赶紧参加春晖杯。这还有一个就是说，提升自己。还有一个你说我不想办绿卡，我想回国，我就是爱国，对不对？那没关系。但是爱国，你像他们说的，你知道好多投资人是火上浇油，你火已经起来了，他给你浇点油，那火更旺，然后他捞一把走了。对不对？但是呢，第一桶金很难，你知道吧？就是跟那个投资人呢，就是说要第一桶金非常难。申请国内的funding也是一样， 你要拿到第一个方点非常难。所以呢，申请方点的时候都有一项，你有没有得过奖？没有得过，对不对？好多时候你知道我们整天在这研究这个实验室里面，就是想埋头苦干，就是想做文章，做文章呢，不管有没有人读，但反正我要发，对不对啊？就是想发文章。最后呢，就是搞得自己毕业了以后有点无所适从了，哎呦，该怎么办呢？对不对啊？所以这个回国的时候呢，他在美国也没得过奖嘛，因为你教授一般有什么奖都是教授自己就猜到口袋里去了，很少有人愿意跟你 share， 对不对？你自己非常优秀的有那么几个，哦，将来是做了华人的这个 faculty 了，或者是开公司的都不多，得奖的不多。那所以呢，就是说到最后你也没有奖，你到回国了以后，你说我什么地方毕业的，你没得过奖，你要去申请方点难。就是说第一个人家说你到我们园区来，我给你多少万嘛，你那个就可能拿不到，因为你没得过奖，所以这个是个好机会。你说春晖杯得奖了，不管怎么样，我得了一个奖了，我有国家级的奖，这个不行。然后还有一个就是检验自己的项目，那就是说你说我这个项目好，但是有的时候呢，你说能不能创业，能不能，所以你就写一写创业计划去看一看，参加这个检验一下自己的项目。如果说基本上在这边，你知道，如果说你没有拿到 VC 的投资，不能说你这个项目就不好，对不对？马云还被多少人给拒绝了呢，对不对？但是呢，如果说你在这个春晖杯里面，哎呀，领事到了 ，OK 了。如果在春晖杯里面，就是说你没有得奖的话，基本上你这个项目就没有什么机会。对，所以说我建议就是还是去检验一下自己的项目，然后。还有一个就是说，你这个春晖杯拿到，如果说你参加了拿到奖了，那你真的是可以考虑。这是第一，就是说创业啊、起步啊，对不对？你们要不要欢迎一下？
欢迎，我连接完。
啊，继续。
啊 ，OK。所以你如果考虑创业起步，你就可以进去了。那创业的时候你要考虑，这个就是说，你什么时候开始创业？有的人说，我等等吧。总的时候你这就像 just like they say, people hate change, right? So you have to find the pain, what they fear, what they can gain, right? So 这里面你也要考虑，就是我创业的时候，我什么时候开始创业，我们花多少时间？那团队非常重要，就是创业的团队，就是要一定要 diversify， 就是说很多时候我们是搞专业的，没有问题。但是呢，搞这个 finance 的，搞这个 management 的了，它就缺乏。所以说这个团队呢，尽量的 diversify。但是还有这个场地、资金、项目这些东西呢，就是说你真正创业的时候都是要考虑的。然后呢，在这个参加这个春晖杯比赛的时候，就是你能自己想出来都行。就是像他们不赞成的，他们刚才讲的是完全不赞成的，对不对？就是全部是纸上谈兵的。但是呢，这个是你必须要谈出来的。那春晖杯这个创业大赛怎么开始创业？就是第一个是你要注册，就是在网上注册，你们都有这个联机了，对不对？还有一个网上注册提交计划书，入围了之后，幸运的入围了，然后就能获奖。回国他会这个有每个人都有一个故事，你把那个做强化，你把你自己项目的简介做强化，然后各个创业员都会来跟你接洽，跟你创业。那做生物做医药的呢，我觉得是这个回去的交流的机会是很好，但是你说就在那你就能拿到一大笔投资，可能性不大，特别是现在啊。但是呢，做你们这种 app， 电脑的这种 app， 你在美国找投资人好多是，我也曾经碰到过这样的。就是说说我有一个很好的计划，那个怎么样，你愿不愿意给我投 VC？ VC 说你这个做 app， 先做 app 看看有多少人 download， 多少人买。当然这个火起来了，它可以再加把油；火起不来，它就不管了。那这里还有个专利，就是创意计划书那个第一个就是专利权，在这个你做任何事情以前。它都要有声明。那 特别是对于理工科的人来说呢，他专利呢好多是在实验室做出来的。你说我怎么避开这个问题？幸运的是呢，在这一步呢，你自己就是说你不要去偷你师兄的技术，你就是用你自己的技术，那应该是就是没什么问题，对吧？就不要侵犯你师兄师弟的利益就行了。但是你自己要声明说我没有侵犯别人的利益专利，但是没有专利也可以参赛的，我见过。就是说，你说那我们是不是没有专利我就不能参赛？那没有专利呢，这个春晖杯计划这个参加比赛也是可以的，只要你能够把你的那个创意计划书写的让人信服，你说我这是一个产品。那还有一个摘要，就是在全面的创意计划书之前有个摘要，大概是1个配页左右。1个配页左右呢，这个摘要呢叫全面。很多时候我们自己做技术啊，做得很熟了以后，讲这个技术是头头是道，但实际上呢，在这里面技术不是讲的特别多。很多时候你讲的是，因为你是一个创业计划书，你是要把这个东西拿出去做生意，你是要从公司要把这个产品出来，要怎么样去吸引投资，怎么样去用这个投资，怎么样把这个公司扩大。这样呢，它是要高度的浓缩。那后面呢有像后面就是详细的一项一项的呢就是。我要再重复一遍，就是因为我们做技术的比较多，很多时候你要我写这个，就像发文章一样，这个就是说发个5个配置、10个配置都没有问题，对不对？你能写，但是这个不能这么做。技术方面你写的要不要写那么多？因为说实话，你做的技术，对别人来说大部分都是外行，别人都看不懂，所以你写那么多也是没用。所以你得想办法，你把这个技术转化的产品，它的前景给写出来。特别是做生物的，我也碰到过这样的人，做生物的，做药物开发的，他在实验室里待的久，实验室里我们做的多了都是做什么酶的抑制剂，对不对啊？还有做这个什么拮抗剂，对不对？那最后呢，就是他做的因为太钻进去了，钻到这个酶的抑制剂了，最后就只顾做这个酶的抑制剂，这个酶的抑制剂是干嘛的？都忘了，真的有的呀，对不对啊？因为这个时候，所以你就把你做酶的抑制剂不是你的目的啊，对不对啊？最后你这个酶它是用来干嘛的？因为这个酶是就是比如说这个是比如拿癌症来说，那是比如说这个癌细胞，它这个生长它这个生长它需要这个酶。它需要这个酶的话，那你说我来抑制这个酶，通过抑制这个酶来抑制这个癌细胞的生长，那来达到这个抗癌的目的，是不是啊？对不对？所以说你这样子，你要把这个，那你说最后我要查的是这个，我要做的是这个抗癌药，因为你跟这个 venture capital， 他说我做酶的抑制剂，他没有 idea， 真的是没有 idea。你跟我就是我还是做什么酶的抑制剂，你跟我说我可以跟你隔一个领域，我都没有 idea， 对不对？所以你得把它转化成治什么病的药，然后你就说，这个病有多大的市场？那因为也是去年在哥伦比亚做这个讲座的时候，碰到有人在问你，他说我怎么去查我这个东西的市场份额有多大？对你做一个东西，你自己的市场份额你都不会去查，你怎么去创业呢？对不对？所以你得去找这个。那你创业还有这个做这个，你要对自己的 current 领域的这个 information 比较了解，你不能拿这个10年前的总是拿10年前的这个 information 来做这个创业，你得跟踪这个现在的市场、现在的发展、现在这个领域，所以你得把这个文献你给引上去，所以这样你就知道你的竞争对手是谁。究竟有没有竞争对手？然后你自己的产品的优越性在什么地方，对不对？比方说，我自己做的是一个抗菌药，是属于一个载谱抗生素。什么叫载谱抗生素？这现在大家都知道广谱抗生素，但广谱抗生素副作用大家也有所警觉了。警觉了以后，这个其实就是说属于用广谱抗生素之后，它肠道的菌群平衡被破坏，所以呢有这样一个细菌叫C. diff Clostridium difficile， 所以它呢就是在 抗生素停用之后，然后细菌会再长回来。那再长回来的时候，它呢有可能就长得比这个你的益生菌快。那比益生菌快的时候，这个时候它本身并不是特别可怕，但是它释放出的毒素特别可怕。就像人家说的，糖尿病本身血糖高不可怕，但可怕的是它的后面的副作用，对不对？所以，那它这个在肠道里面，它就长了以后释放释放毒素，它有3种毒素。那释放这个毒素以后呢，它就会导致伪膜性肠炎。如果这个毒素进入到血液的话，那差不多就30%会死亡，对吧？但是呢，但是这个细菌呢，就是特别是在这个老年人，因为老年人他的这个抵抗力差的话，所以他经常这个特别容易受感染。那还有一个在医院里面，是因为生病的人多嘛，老年人去医院比较多嘛，所以说他这个容易产生这个问题。那他每年基本上这个都会上新闻，所以说我每隔一段时间我都得去 update 这个 information。比如说今年2月份 ，NBC 就把它放到 C. diff Clostridium difficile， 它不是用 the worst bug， 他说 the baddest bug， 啊，他说 the baddest bug 就 NBC News， 就是因为这个病菌它是认为现在是目前所有病菌当中威胁等级最高的，是 CDC， 啊，那你项目技术就是说你怎么去做？那这个一方面就是说，这个就是你可以用到这个技术里面，就可以用到做酶类抑制剂。我通过做酶类抑制剂来抑制癌细胞的生长，对吧？那你具体，然后你这里面有些创新，你可以写出来，就是说比如说你有什么新的这个 breakthrough， 那这些别人没有的，那你这个就是这里面你要体现出来。但是呢，下面呢你还是体现技术之后，你还是要写这个产品，你的产品是什么？
徐先生，我问你一个问题，就是说您刚才说估计市场，您说这东西很好，但是这市场上多少钱，这你怎么估计？
因为一般都有一个叫 due diligence， 就是 due diligence， 那它就是说这个有一些专门做这个市场报告的公司，那也有一些呢，就是说跟你做类似的，除非就是说你是世界上唯一的一个做这个领域的东西，否则只要是你不是你只要不是唯一，那可能已经有的上市的药啊，或者是已经有的上市的产品啊类似的，它都会有个市场份额的估计在的。所以其实不是说你 exactly 我自己这个，但是你可以用别人那个做参考。大概这是我的理解，但是他们可能会有，如果是投资人要真正投资你这个项目的话，他会自己去做。对，不是说你说什么东西他会信的。对，那如果说你这个有什么标准，项目产品标准，那你这个什么证书，比如说甚至就是你这个产品的质量分析检验证书，都可以或者叫COA， 这个 Certificate of Analysis， 就是好多你说我没有这个什么质量什么证书，有的时候你拿这个 Certificate of Analysis 也可以。那你这个还有这个产品的商业模式、生产营销、获利方式，那这个呢，在他们看来，像刚才说的，就是说很多时候都是有点不行，对吧？但实际上在你写这个创意计划书的时候，包括特别是在中国，就是说申请写创意计划书，还有你申请 grant， 它都要你写未来3年，因为国内它更看重的是税收，你没有税收，你得想办法给它挤出税收来。就是说，特别是在创业计划书上，如果你说我这个3年甚至5年，为什么国内现在对，就是说你要做生物，特别是做生物做新药的，会说 raise fundraising 还是很难的，就是因为你这个利润就是你这个利润和这个税收出不来。如果你说我要做个5年的，在这里面的话，没有人特别感兴趣的。所以说，你这个创业计划书里面都有大概你的 milestone。我什么时候达到 milestone？ 大概基本上你要把它写出来是3个月一个 milestone， 6个月呢就稍微有点太长了。如果你说milestone， 你说我2年搞一个，我做技术了嘛，哪有那么容易的？日子一晃就过去了，2年能做出点东西来不错了，对不对啊？ 可是你是这么说的，事实也是这样。但是你如果真的就这么写上去了 ，most likely 就是说这些也是会被 trash。就是说你不要写的太长，就是说你大概就是在3到不要超过6个月一个 milestone， 你得给他时间短一点，因为好多人没有那么多的耐心。包括我跟国内的投资人也接触过，他们也就这么说了，说不定过了6个月他自己就跳槽了，对吧？所以说，对，所以说他根本就没有这个耐心在那等你去养这个鸡再来下单。当然，这个政府呢，就是说这种政府有足够的耐心，所以有的如果是有好的项目的政府的话，它可以 match up 3000万、5000万都有。我见过，但是我自己没拿到。然后创业的时候呢，就是说你要真的是回国的话，如果你爸不是李刚的话呢，你真的是要考虑这些事情。就是这么一个是一个合作者，你就是跟这个很多时候啊，就是说因为我们是搞专业的，但是往往跟这个 management 一开始共苦的时候能够够。但是呢，同干的时候，绝大部分情况下就是分手。有很多就是我们自己的一种君子协定、口头协定，就是这边呢，你要跟美国人玩呢，他跟你是正儿八经，就是说很多时候都是板上钉钉就写下来的，对吧？还通过律师。在中国好多我们这种 VC 啊，什么人都是朋友引荐过来的 ，VC 可能还正规一点，但是就是特别是个人投资。就是有的是煤老板的，有的是房老板的，对不对啊？他说我来投，他来投个300万、500万的，他跟你都是君子，好多是君子协定了，对不对啊？你可能当时有人投也不错了，我也不 care 什么股权了，我就贱卖了，对不对啊？就是这样想，只要有人投，结果呢，最后真成了，问题就来了，对啊，那不成道也就罢了，对不对？那还有一个地方政府官员，这个是这2年可能会好一点，但是还是不可避免。特别是你的企业，特别是企业在创始之初，如果说你3年5年不出税收的话，你就会知道很难。我自己有亲自深深的体会。对，还有一个就是一家人，这个我以前开过玩笑，我说我的同学当中有很多回国创业的。就90%都离婚了，所以我不是在吓唬你们，但是你得把这个关系给处理好，也有不离的了。对，所以我就跟你讲这么多，因为我主要是 focus 在这个抽微杯这个怎么处理这个话。如果说我私下有问题，我们可以交流，好吧？
So basically that concludes all the presentations from tonight. But once again, we'd like to thank all the 3 speakers tonight that take their time to come to us. And then right now we're going to have a quick, I think we have about 10 minutes, 5 minutes, we can do a quick Q&A session. So if anyone have any questions to any of our speakers, just raise your hand and we'll do like a discussion panel-based questions. Take away, yep.
徐博士，你的这个在做创业书的时候，这个知识产权的问题是怎么样保护的？就是说，在你把你所有的这个创业计划 submit 给你对方的时候，那么中间你尤其是技术那一块儿，加上你自己的就是核心技术中间会不会需要一些你是怎么样进行这个？
你是冲杯杯吗？
我不是具体指什么杯，就是任何就是说你在中国，因为在美国这个比较全面，就是知识产权的保护，但是在中国的话，你怎么样能够让自己这个核心技术没有就是在你给其他的投资人也好，还是其他的 partner 已经就 disclose 了以后，怎么样能够保护自己，不让别人把这个技术窃取或者利用？
我给你举我自己的例子，就是说，第一，我要他 sign document， 这是第一的。但是虽然说我们都知道这个 document 可能是 means nothing， 但是我还是要 sign， 对吧？这是第一。sign 了之后呢，我会给他一个 summary。就是说，给他一个总结，比如像我们做药的，那是 preclinical 这个方面的信息，对吧？但是这个东西怎么做出来的，这个举手我不会透给他，对不对？因为这个就 preclinical， 你这个 toxicity， 你这个 efficacy， toxicity， 这 这个你给他也无所谓的，你知道吧？但是呢，你这个东西怎么做出来的，千万不要全部 release 给他。在这里，这个一开始我就跟他说，我说怎么样克服了这个问题，对吧？但是我不把技术，就你只能是这样保护，因为否则的话你什么都不给他，他也不给你，他根本就不跟你聊，对不对？你给他了，他也不一定就给你钱，但是你不给他是肯定不给你钱，所以你总会给一点信息。另外一个呢，你知道那个preclinical 真正你像我做的这个，如果说现在叠起来的话，估计文件都至少这么高厚，因为你说一个项目的测试，它来了以后，这种 CRO 给你来的就是这么多，原始数据都在里面。那其实呢，真正的 summary 就是1个 page、2个 page， 对不对啊？所以说这个时候我就跟他说，如果你自己要，你可以来翻，我提供给你 ，open 给你，你自己去翻，对不对啊？但是我自己负责去把 summary 给你。
那么你从什么时候开始可以考虑申请专利了呢？
专利呢，你像我做的这个药吧，我们本身这个药本身的 application 是一个新的化合物，它是一个新的 application， 我们是在10年就申请了，10年申请了就12年就批了，所以是12年的专利。但是呢，这个 priority date 是10年，对啊。但是呢，这个合成专利我今年才上面的出去。因为在上面的之前就是有一个，就是现在我们还在紧锣密鼓的谈，就是有可能性，虽然也不一定，但是如果我不上面这个合成专利的话呢，它肯定就是说，因为没保护嘛，你就觉得你这里面可能本身就没有东西，就忽悠他，或者是这个没有保护，他也不知道你的门槛有多高，但我专利上面的出去了。就是说，他就知道啊，你这个是真的，你不是在忽悠我。
那如果你除了就是 VC 作为投资者以外，你会因为你是在 preclinical 的话你会考虑给那个大型的这种 pharmaceutical 公司把这个技术 license 给他们吗？还是有这种也作为
做过 presentation， 但是呢，好多像我做的 ，unfortunately 我做的这个是在抗生素。很多的大的 pharmaceutical 呢，他们都自己不做抗生素了。那这种 Boston 这边呢，它有个公司叫 Cubist， 你知道 Cubist 现在把 Merck 给买了，对吧？那 Cubist 它是做抗生素的，它做抗生素，但是它也是我们 competitor。所以当然我们也给 Cubist 的 presentation， 但是大公司也会偷的，大公司也不是说大公司偷你说，比如像我们这个技术最早的。就是不知道这边有没有 Merck 的，就是在New Jersey的 Merck， 在90年代90年左右，就这个95年左右给他们做 presentation， 他们感兴趣，最后做那时候也没有经验，做完了 presentation， 挺好的，然后说你 send 一点 sample 过来，那时候公司刚起步嘛，就觉得人家感兴趣了，就给人家送很多 sample 过去了。你知道傻的，也没有让他签字，说不准你 publish， 不准什么你 release， 没有，就是说傻。结果过了一会儿，过了一阵子，他没信息了，又过了1年多，他发文章了。对啊，后来又过了1年多发了一个文章，然后大概又过了3年嘛，他又发了一个文章，然后就没影了。后来再通过内部人就打这个，他们整个那个 division 就又被砍掉了。所以他们也偷。不是他们不偷，只是他们偷只不过是什么呢？你没被法律保护的情况下，他就可以去合法的偷你。
I have 2 questions. Maybe may I ask Steve? Sure. So first of all, thanks for the speech, and it's very interesting. The 3 basic emotional reasons to buy. I might add one more thing. I think that is basically for the fourth one. The basically is actually about law and health. I can classify to the 3 others. So I think I should add that. Actually in Chinese we have also the specific word to describe that as 刚需. So that means something we need basically. And So another question is I kind of want to ask, when I'm developing an app right now, so when I see my business model, I see previously there are something similar existing in this market already. So do you think it's good to pick up some of them to compare to my business model, or just list them and don't need to say too much about the other competitors, how to compare them?
Well, if you're going to be talking to investors, they've already, and you've been introduced to them, I guarantee you they've done a little bit of looking as to your app and who they may know that's out there. And so if they know some competitors that you don't mention, that's a glaring omission. And that's going to say something to them about, well, you're not very up on the market. So you really need to know that. But you need to present clearly what advantages your app has over them, or what your business model has an advantage over them.
And then focus on the advantages.
You should have advantages, but then they may have some advantages over you. And if they're knowledgeable on that space, and when you're dealing with venture capitalists or investors, the number one key for pitching to them is you want to pitch to investors that are predisposed to your product and the market that you're in. So they will have if they understand who those competitors are, they understand if they have advantages over you. And so you'll have
also say that.
Right, and so you'll have to be able to say why that isn't that big a deal, or we plan to address that in the next rev of the product that we have, or something of that nature.
Also, when I was trying to write my business plan, I found it's really hard to predict the future. So currently I focus on this future, and I have my way to do my business. But in the future, I might change it a little bit. So do you think the investors can allow this kind of flexibility for developing something new, and in the future they might change that, not to do one exactly according to the business plan?
Well, as Mark said, any financial projections
It's made up.
Is made up. And they know that. They know that you're picking numbers out of the air. Unless you're already out there with a product and you already have some traction with customers who have purchased it, that you can actually build a bottoms-up model for, right? You don't know, you don't have a sales pipeline.
Okay.
That's saying, well, we've got 1,000 inquiries. Our track record shows that we can close 25% of those, et cetera. So you can't really have an accurate, a reasonable forecast.
So I can always modify and update it.
You need to. Without change, you die.
Right. Anyone who says that they know what's going to happen 6 months out lies.
You know, I have another comment on your first question, and that is, if you don't want competitors, right? So you can shrink the market through segmentation until you have a space